Hello and welcome to Season 2 of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Scott.
And I'm your other host, Mark.
In each episode, Mark and I will discuss the key topics that impact on football coaching in the foundation and youth development phases. We will share our thoughts, ideas and experiences, and whenever possible include guests so we can get their insights and opinions too. Thanks for listening and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello everybody and welcome to the latest episode of the Soccer Coaching Podcast. Today I'm going solo. Scott is unable to join me. However, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Dave Francis, the creator of the Foundation Age Coaching website. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
Many thanks for joining us. I know we've been talking about this for a couple of months now, so it's great to finally kind of get together. It's been a bit of a challenge.
Absolutely, mate. I've been looking forward to it.
How's things?
Things are good, mate. All things considering, like we were talking about earlier, missing the football. Looking forward to getting back out with the kids and seeing them again. But
it's strange times, right?
It is massively strange. Yeah.
Really strange times. It's kind of obviously nothing. I've never seen anything like this in my kind of lifetime. And I think if you had said at the end of last year that this is going to be the situation, you just wouldn't believe it, would you?
Oh, not in a million years. Not in a million years. I was actually only in Southeast Asia at the end of last year.
Oh, really?
Just to think of how things have gone and spread, it's madness. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's been a funny year overall. I think Scott and I were commenting the other day, like with the weather, how much rain we've had at the kind of first 3 months of the year. We had so many games kind of called off, and I think we went 6 weeks without a match at one point. And then all of a sudden, you're looking forward to the nice weather to come at the end of March, April, May, and then bang, that's it. There's no football, no training. Nothing.
Yeah. Actually, I was in a similar position. I mean, I think we had a little bit of a futsal break in between, but
nice. Same
thing with the outfield stuff. It was just murder waiting for the pitches to dry.
Yeah, indeed. So just tell us, Dave, before we get into your introduction, just tell us how are you kind of keeping in contact with your players at the moment? Then are you setting them any kind of weekly challenges? Are you doing anything with the players to keep in contact with them?
Yeah, to be fair, I listened to your you guys' episode on the things you were doing a couple of weeks into the lockdown, and we've tried to implement similar things in terms of physical challenges and creative challenges with the players. So, the one idea that you guys said that I really liked in terms of coming up with a dream team and including yourself was great.
Yeah,
we've asked, well, from a grassroots team anyway, the girls to pick a skill that they're going to master by the time we get back to practice. So they've all selected one.
Brilliant.
And whoever's able to perform their skill the best, we're actually going to call the skill their name.
Yeah.
So for instance, I've got a player called Evie. I think she chose the Cruyff turn.
Yeah.
She's able to master that perfectly. It's then from now on going to be known as the Evie turn.
Brilliant.
So there's that little bit of what do you call it?
It's a bit of
internal pride.
Yeah, exactly. A bit of excitement, right, for all the girls to kind of get into it. Yeah, that's a brilliant idea, actually. I'm sure Scott will listen back to this, and I'm sure he might kind of steal that idea for the under-8s team. Sounds good. So, Dave, just give us in the kind of, I guess, classic podcast style. Just give us a bit of background to kind of who you are, how you got into football and coaching, and also just talk to us a little bit about the Foundation Age website.
Okay, I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. So I was always interested in the coaching side of things due to the fact I knew early on I was never going to be good enough to play the game at any kind of standard.
Yeah.
I think at the age of about 15, I actually tried to get a couple of younger lads from my cul-de-sac to try and start a football team, which lasted all of one session because naturally parents didn't want to leave their kids with another kid.
Yeah.
So that sort of fell by the wayside. But then when I was at college, I think in 2004, I saw a poster asking for coaches to go over to the US for the summer.
Right.
So I put an application in with a company called MLS Camps. I spent 3 months in Denver doing football camps, and I just absolutely loved it. Did the same thing again the next summer, and then the following year when I'd finished uni, I went out with them for 2 sort of 9-month periods over to California. So obviously much worse places to spend your time.
Yeah.
Where I was spending the spring and the autumn working with teams, and then doing the camps in the summer.
Yeah.
For me, I needed a bit more of a challenge because although I was working with the teams, I wasn't actually coaching them on game days. So then I transitioned over to the East Coast to New Jersey, where I worked for a company where I was getting to coach teams and, lead them on game days, which was furthered my experience as a coach. The recession sadly kicked in then, and as a result, the camp industry, well, it just died. So the company I worked for had to get rid of a load of coaches. I was one of them. So I spent a little bit of time away from football, then about a year and a half. But as luck would have it, I went over to Southeast Asia, and the people I was working for were in discussions to buy a sizable percentage of Crawley Town Football Club.
Okay.
Knowing that I'd had experience working in football, when that transaction went through, they then asked me to go back to England and work for the club. So I was charged with setting up the community scheme, which then became the Community Foundation as they got promoted to the Football League. I was sharing an office with the academy guys, so I was able to get some assistant coaching working with the under 11s there.
Yeah.
We set up a girls program as well, which I head coached one of the teams. So that was, once again, I was able to get my own coaching on the go.
Yeah.
To get my game day experience on the go. And also when I was in the States, I was starting to answer to people. Here it was my team. I was able to sort of implement my own ideas. I still felt like America was a place that I wanted to get back to, that I had unfinished business there. So an opportunity came to go back out in, I think, 2013.
Okay.
I went back over to New Jersey with a company there. I oversaw a summer program for that company, and then when the director of staff education left, I spent the last 3 months with that company overseeing the education for the coaches, which was a good challenge as well, and it was nice to show them a few different things.
Must have been a good experience, actually. So you doing, was that kind of just coach education, coach mentoring? Once
a week we had access to an AstroTurf facility. We'd bring them over. We'd bring all the coaches in that morning. We'd run them through different activities. Sometimes we'd get some of the more experienced coaches delivering practices as well.
Yeah.
We showed them different ideas that they could use. And then when I had spare time in the week, I'd also go out and watch them. And we had an evaluation form to fill in and sort of give them some feedback afterwards in terms of how their session went. So encompassed both the education and the mentoring side of things.
Yeah.
After that, I moved down to North Carolina for 3 years, where I was working for a company once again and doing my team coaching. But I also got the chance to spend the summer working for Wolves. They have North American camps going on over there, so I was able to go and represent them. And at the end of the summer, they would have what they call the national camp, where their staff would come over, their academy staff, and they'd be delivering to what was deemed the best players who had done these camps throughout the States and Canada.
Yep.
I was also fortunate enough while I was there for the company I was working for, who had what they called their elite camps. And I know that's a word that Paul Wilkinson, who used to play for Middlesbrough and was the assistant manager at Cardiff, come over to deliver.
Yep.
Mickey Adams, who'd been manager of Leicester in the Premier League, come over to deliver. And seeing those guys in action was fantastic as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be a great experience.
Yeah, I think the one thing as well, Mickey Adams in particular, I mean, this is a guy who's coached in the Premier League. He's coached some of the best players in the country, the likes of, I think Stan Collymore was a big name, obviously, who he'd once managed.
Yeah.
But him coming over to work with these kids and doing it for 3 hours in the baking sun and this massive humidity, just his energy and his enthusiasm to help them, and it was fantastic to see someone at that level still have that energy with players who really he doesn't have to be working with if he didn't want to.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. Like just from my experience of seeing coaches, those coaches that really stand out are the ones that have got so much energy, so much enthusiasm, that the coaches that are able to relate to the children they're coaching, even if it's under 6s, under 7s. They just kind of bring it every session, right? They kind of walk through those gates and they just kind of switch into this mode, and they're able to bring it every session. It makes such a difference, I think, for the experience of the kids if you just bring that energy, enthusiasm to the sessions.
Oh, 100%. They feed off it massively.
Yeah.
If you're having a good time, they're generally going to have a good time as well, I think. Anyway, so once my term there was done, I came back to England, and currently I'm doing some grassroots coaching with my local club where I'm working with girls.
Yep.
And I'm also working on the development centre for Leicester City, where I'm working with boys. And every so often I do a little bit of staff education with a company called Youth Elite Soccer, who partner with the Chicago Fire. coaches in England who are going over to the US.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say you kind of fairly well travelled with your coaching experience there. So just tell us from your experience in the US, and a lot of funny enough, a lot of coaches we've had on to onto the podcast have had experience of coaching in the US and always go on about how kind of important it was in terms of their kind of education process and help them become the coaches they are today. How did you find the kind of camps you were doing and coaching in the US, and how was it different to kind of coaching in the UK then?
So in terms of my own development, I think it was massive. I listened to your episode a few weeks back when you spoke to Saul Isaacson-Hurst, and he was talking about how big of an experience it was for him. And for me, it was really important. And for any young coach listening who wants to make a career in it, I would tell them straight away to get yourself over there, because the opportunity to be out on the pitch for 4 or 5 hours a day, working with different teams, doing different types of sessions. So, for instance, I might have a private session where you're doing a one-to-one session. You've got to learn how to manipulate that so it's going to suit the player. You then might have like a soccer specific conditioning practice for people who have signed up. So once again, that's something else you've got to learn. Then you're going over to do your team practice. You might have, so for instance, just using myself as an example, I had an under 12 girls team who were seen as one of the best teams in the state. They were always, competing with the top clubs there. But then I'd have an under 11 girls team who had just come out of what they call recreational soccer. Some of them could barely kick a ball. So once again, you're having to learn how to coach in different sorts of styles, work with different players. You've also got the difference in culture over there. I don't want to badmouth the British kids, but they're also very polite. Like the word coach, it's like calling your teacher sir. It's that they don't refer to you by name, whereas over here it seems a little bit more informal. Having 2 practices a week with all teams is definitely a bonus. I know some teams are lucky to do that here, some are not. But I think the big differences I noticed over there, first of all, girls football is far bigger. It's about even with the boys in terms of players playing. Like tournaments, certain tournaments, they're big tournaments, would have to have a girls' weekend and a boys' weekend separate.
Yeah.
To be able to get all those teams in. Like I said, there's the respect factor as well.
Yeah.
And there's also there also seems to be a lot more athletic over there. I think due to the fact they play multiple sports, whereas over here it's very football oriented. Yeah. Obviously, that has its benefits as well, because over here, for me, the players have a little bit more intelligence and a little bit more understanding of the game.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. Well, I think firstly on the girls' football, I think it's great. I look at the club where I'm a coach, my grassroots club. I think it's great that we're starting to see the girls' teams really kind of growing now. Whereas we had 1 or 2 teams a couple of seasons ago, we've pretty much got teams for all the age groups now. And the younger teams, I think under 5s, under 6s, and into under 7s, they're mixed teams as well. And we're starting to see through the under 5 intake a much higher percentage of girls coming through as well. So I think it's fantastic to see the girls' game growing, and then obviously that's probably a result of the women's game in general becoming. You see a lot more of that on TV now, and the standard and the quality of that is very good as well. But obviously in the US, the women's football's been big for quite a number of years now. So I'd imagine the girls' interest is quite high over there.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing as well. It's quite funny where you speak to young boys over there, they all want to play for Real Madrid, Barcelona, PSG, whoever.
Yeah.
You speak to the young girls over there, they all want to play for the national team.
Yeah, I can see that. I just want to ask you another question. Actually, you mentioned it earlier. Actually, the difference between I think you were coaching in the US, but you weren't coaching game day. So it sounds like you were only doing sessions.
Yeah.
Just out of interest, how did you what were your session plans like for training only type environment versus when you train for matches as well? Because the way I always think it in my head is that I try to relate my training to my matches, because if there's something I want to build on in matches, then I'd do it for 1 or 2, 3 weeks in training, and then hopefully start to see the results coming through on match day. So what was the kind of coaching approach then when you didn't actually have a match day, you're only doing training?
It depended, to be honest. Sometimes when I was in a position where I was based at the same club, sometimes I'd be able to go out and watch games.
Yeah.
So then I could have an understanding of where the team were, how they were playing, speak to the coach.
Yeah.
And find and say, look, this is what I think, and then see if they agree with me or not. If it was a team that I wasn't coaching and I wasn't getting to see play, I'd just have to rely on the coach's feedback. And whether I agreed with the way they wanted me to go about things or not, I had to respect the fact it was ultimately their decision.
Right. Okay.
Obviously, a team that I am coaching, I'm getting to see them on game days. I've got them 2 sessions a week. My own mentality is to build a season plan rather than go game by game. So I was able to progress things throughout and make little tweaks here and there as needed.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. I think I have a similar kind of approach in terms of I want to map it out for the season, and it's just I was just interested to understand whether you had a different approach where you just purely coaching and not kind of taking the match days. So just at the moment then, so you're coaching at the grassroots team. So I think you said you got a couple of age groups at the moment, under 9s and under 11s, I believe. That's girls teams. And then you do some other coaching at a development centre as well, academy/development centre. And you do a boys team there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how do you find the differences between coaching girls and boys? Is it very different, or?
It's quite different. Definitely, the personalities are a lot different.
Yeah.
I find that boys try, and this is a very big generalisation, but I find that boys try and do everything at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Whereas girls try and do things right before they go at full speed.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, ideally you want that mix somewhere in the middle of the two. My own experience is boys are a little bit more egotistical. So they're happy to do the 1v1s. They want to do the fancy flicks and score the fancy goals. Whereas the girls are a little bit more social. They pass the ball a bit too much.
Yeah.
It's almost like, I don't want to score. I don't want the glory, so I'm going to give it to you instead. So there are those little nuances which are quite interesting.
Yeah.
By the time they get to say under 11, under 12, the physical differences are quite big as well.
Yes.
You know, generally under 7, under 8, they're very physically they're very similar. But by the time they're under 11, under 12, the bodies are starting to grow differently.
Yes.
I mean, even something as simple as the warm-ups have to change.
Yeah.
Because I think the statistic I read for the girls anyway, and I've spoke to other people about this, when they get to their teenage years, they're 6 times more likely to suffer from an ACL injury.
Oh, really?
Than boys, yeah.
Right.
Now, once again, I don't know the full science, but my understanding is it's due to the way their hips grow.
Okay.
So when they chop and change direction, there's more weight going down into their knee, which can cause those injuries. So when you get into that under 11, under 12 age group, making sure the warm-ups are including some kind of activity that's sort of strengthening that area, it has to be important. Whereas with the boys, you know, you can go through what the FIFA suggests and the other warm-up stretches and dynamics as it usually takes place.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I guess you don't really unless you've kind of coached girls teams, or if you had that diversification in your coaching and you've done that kind of research, you don't really appreciate that kind of thing. And I guess that's an argument for coaching, having all different experiences in your coaching locker. Yeah,
100%. It's not something I ever would have thought of otherwise.
Okay, well, listen, thanks so much for your background. It's as I said, it's a well-travelled, very varied background. This must be really interesting. Must have had some really good experiences along the way. So just kind of getting into the kind of discussion then, I think one of the things that I kind of want to kind of try and pull out from our discussion is trying to take your experiences of coaching across different age groups, across boys and girls, and really starting to understand some of the different nuances there and how you go about your kind of coaching differently. And I guess a good place to start would really is around your actual kind of philosophy and how you approach coaching. What would you say your kind of coaching philosophy is?
To put it simply, I'd say it's player first, team second.
Yep.
Trying to focus on the individual, focus on the parts rather than the sum.
Yeah.
Especially working with the foundation age groups. You know, the work I'm doing at the development centre, our goal ultimately is to get those kids into the academy. So we have to focus on each individual as they are and work on the things they need to work on. But even then, if you went working in grassroots, you've got players coming from all different types of motivations. So I know a team I worked with. I had a team of under 12 girls that I gave a questionnaire to, for example. One of the questions was, what are your reasons for playing soccer? This was over in the States. One of the girls wrote a pretty detailed explanation about how she wanted to be the best player in the world, and she wanted everyone chanting her name when she won the World Cup.
Brilliant.
There was another girl who said she only wanted to play until high school and learn how to do the rainbow flick, the one over your head.
Yeah.
Once again, I've got to coach one of them completely different to the other one.
Yeah.
Because there's no point me trying to push the one who only wants to play till high school. Likewise, there's no point me being all too easy going with the one who wants to ultimately play professional. So I think looking at the players first, team second is important. 1v1s are a big part as well.
Okay.
I try and incorporate those into all my practices. I think if players can master the 1v1s, then there's never going to be shouldn't be a situation where they're ever going to be uncomfortable with.
So just on that then, on that 1v1, so do you do that through all the age groups then? So even if you're coaching under 11s, under 12s, do you still using 1-to-1s, 1v1s at that age group, or your 1v1s focus more on your under 7s, under 8s, under 9s?
No, even with the under 11s and under 12s, obviously they might have a little bit of a different look to them.
Yeah.
So for example, it might be that, just talking about a possession activity, for example, I might have a 1v1 inside a playing area. There's 4 supporting players on the outside.
Yep.
There's 4 defensive players in front of them screening the passes.
Yep.
So you've got the 1v1 in the middle. The person on the ball is looking for the opportunity to play to the outside and get the ball back. So you've got that possession play and you've got the angles and whatnot happening, but ultimately it's that 1v1 in the middle. They've got to hold that defender off and stop them from getting the ball off them.
Yeah.
Whereas you're looking at the under 8s, it's probably not going to be that complex. It's going to be a very simple 1v1 where it's just the one player versus the one player. And then on a pitch next to them, it's one player versus one player and so on and so forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good point. Actually, I know that some of the 1v1s. I'm totally on board with what you say. The 1v1, I think it's a very important part of the foundation age coaching. I think the interesting thing is I do something similar. I think we do, or I've done a 2v2 or a 1v1 plus 1. So you might have a couple of kind of small goals and with 2 goalkeepers that are kind of outfield players as well. But in the middle, you have your 1v1 and in the 1v1 they can use their kind of support players, but they're the only ones can score, for example. And that's more focused for your under 10s, under 11s age group. But as you say, if you're under 7s, under 8s, you do a bit more kind of maybe kind of like a road to Wembley type approach where you've got them lined up and you kind of move up or move down kind of thing. But I do agree. Interestingly, on 1v1, you do find that some of the players really, really enjoy that kind of session. And we only normally do it for kind of 10 or 15 minutes. I don't do it for too long because it's quite energy sapping. But some of the boys that I'd coach don't particularly enjoy it. And you can see they're not really, really driven. And some of the players are kind of some of the more technically gifted players that they just don't enjoy it as much as playing in a small-sided game, for example, where they really kind of come alive. How as a coach, how would you deal with those kind of situations?
I think once again that comes down to working with the individual first and the team second. If we've got a situation like that, ideally you know the level of your players. You want to put them with someone who's going to give them that challenge. So if you have got a guy who is technically gifted, for example, you don't want to put him against someone who is just going to keep taking on every single time. You want to put him with someone who's going to challenge him. If he's that good, or she's that good, should I say as well, you could incorporate it so that it's 1 versus 2.
Yeah.
Really make them work for it. Or you can incorporate it so that it's 1 versus 2. And like you've just said, you've got a support player on the outside that you can use to work on their movement.
Yeah.
While the other people are playing 1v1. Because I'm sure, as you're aware, Mark, you never get I don't know about you, but generally sessions are not always going to be the perfect amount of numbers. So sometimes you've got to be able to think on the fly as well. And I was rewatching one of my sessions earlier, actually, and it was a 2v1 practice.
Yeah.
That I was running. So it was like a gauntlet type thing. So you had 2 versus 1, then there was another one behind. But because I had 10 players, that meant I could only have 2 running at the same time. So at the time I had to think on my feet and had a 1v1 going on the far field and then just switched players in and out.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about once again, it's about knowing your players. It's about knowing what challenges are gonna push them, and tweaking things so that they're going to get the most from the session.
Right. Okay. Yep. That's a fair point. So 1v1's big in terms of your philosophy. Anything else?
From a coaching point of view, the only other thing I could maybe add is game days, and just making sure that the players have got the freedom to make their own decisions, which I think a lot of coaches are doing now anyway. I still do see occasions when other coaches are telling players, pass here, dribble there, go here, and that's not something I particularly like.
Yeah,
I can understand maybe cajoling people in terms of where their positioning might be off the ball.
Yeah.
But the player on the ball, the decisions need to be theirs.
Yeah.
And then when they've made it, you can either give them the positive feedback, say that was a good pass because you did this and you did this, or next time you might want to look at doing this instead.
Yeah, yeah. It's that classic shout, isn't it? When the boy or girl's got the ball and they're running through on goal, shoot!
Oh yeah,
the classic shout. Funnily enough, I must say what we had. It's obviously a couple of months ago now, but there was a game under eights game, and I was reffing the game, and I was on the touchline near where the parents were, and one of the parents shouted, "Clear the ball!" It's an opposition parent shouted, "Clear it! Get it out! Clear it!" And the boy cleared it, and it went out for a throw, and it was like a throw really deep in towards the touchline. So our team kind of got possession back, and the parent shouted, "Well done, well done!" And I just couldn't help myself. I just had to say, "Was it really well done? Did you really want him to kick the ball out, or do you think they could have just kind of held on to it, maybe try to take the player on? It's under eights football. Maybe try to make a pass and relax on the ball." But it was just the guy didn't really understand, to be fair to him, but I just can't help myself but challenge these things now, and when I hear them, even if I'm reffing on the kind of side, I can't help but challenge them.
Yeah, I know that feeling well, mate. You've just mentioned that I had a situation once again a couple of years ago over in the States.
Yeah.
And it was a similar thing. Like, one of the parents was shouting to this kid. He was stuck in his own corner, and he had a defender behind him. I think it must have been about the same age, 8 or 9. Parents shouted him to clear the ball. He hasn't done it, which was fair play to him. He's been out. The defender's gone to challenge for the ball. He's turned the other way, played the pass forward, and within 5 seconds, the team have had a shot at the goal, which the keeper saved. And I just spoke a little bit loudly. Well done for not listening to that shout, just to make sure the parent heard it as well as the kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it can be frustrating, but I do think it's kind of, it's coach led a little bit, right? Those kind of instructions. I think it's the responsibility of the coaches at the time really to kind of not control parents, but I think educate parents on what the team's trying to do. And you know what, it's okay for the player if they're in their own area at 7 or 8 years old and they're trying to take a player on, or they're trying to make a pass and they're not just kicking it out. That's okay. And if we concede a goal from it, it doesn't matter. They're learning, and it's about their development, and they'll learn in the next couple of years that this probably isn't the right place to dribble around players, but we want them to relax on the ball and keep possession.
Yeah. I heard you say it the other week on one of your episodes where under a 7v7, you're going to get a load of 2v1 situations in front of your own goal. It's just one of them things. And really, if a foundation age game is ending 0-0, something's gone wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, indeed. Okay, all right. So that's your kind of philosophy. I think there's some great things there. Just one question then. In terms of when you say player first, how do you kind of really bring that out in the session then, player first? Because from my experience, it's obviously it's definitely you want to put the players at the center of your session. It's got to be a player centered and not coach centered training session. But how do you put the players first in terms of, do you set them individual challenges? How do you kind of go about that, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. I actually read an article a few years ago with Ishmael Miller, who, I don't know if you remember, he played for Man City and West Brom and a few other teams.
He actually played for Queen's Park Rangers as well. The team I support. He scored, I think, an important goal one season when we got promoted, actually, or we got to the playoffs. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I remember.
He was talking about when he was in I think he was in Man City's academy, and the bits he really appreciated was when the coach pulled him aside for a couple of minutes and just spoke to him individually.
Yes.
And sent him back in. So that was something that stuck with me, and that's something that I've tried I've tried to do in my sessions as well. So obviously, for me anyway, with my grassroots sessions especially, I've only got an hour, which isn't a long time.
That's not long at all, right? Time once you do your warm up and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, when you've explained the activities, so just trying to make sure when the games are going on, I'm pulling the players aside and letting everyone else get on with playing.
Yeah.
And just maybe mentioning one thing to them rather than overloading with information. We do a similar thing on game days. So when the girls arrive, I'll have a little pitch set up, and for the first 10 minutes from say half an hour before kickoff, I'll just let them play a game. 2 players arrive. You generally get 2 or 3 arrive earlier than everyone else. They can play 1v1 or 2v1, and then as the rest of the girls in, they can filter into the game. But that 10 minutes as well, it gives me a chance to pull the players aside one by one and say, right, this is the thing I want you to focus on today. I want you to focus on receiving on the half turn. Send them back into the game. So rather than doing a team talk, so to speak, and spending forever talking to the kids who the information's probably not going to go in that well, I can give them one thing to focus on, and that's sort of their goal then for the game.
Yeah, it's a brilliant way of doing it, actually. So is that your preferred approach in terms of interventions that you do? Your preferred approach is individual interventions, or do you do group ones, stop the game and do group ones as well? What's your preferred approach?
Yeah, I'll do both. I think obviously there are concepts which involve the whole team.
Yep.
You know, if you're talking about, say, the principles of play, you want to talk about, for me, the biggest thing at the youngest age, under 8, is width, making sure they understand that bit of space. You need to speak to more than one player about that. So there's times when I'll do that, but when I'm speaking to the team, I'll make sure that it's Q&A. So they're giving me the answers until I feel like we're wasting a bit too much time, and then I might have to help them. But yeah, when we get into the game section, or when the practices are actually flowing, if there's a little thing that I see one person, right, I'll pull that player aside and then speak to them as an individual, because everyone else doesn't need to hear it.
Yeah, and you know what? When kids, what do they enjoy most? They enjoy playing games, right? And what they probably the thing they hate the most is when the coach stops the game, stops everyone playing. You could almost see it in their eyes. They're like, oh gosh, that's what have you got to say now? And it is, and even like when I've been to kind of either CPD events, or I've gone to an academy to watch coaches, or I've watched at my grassroots club, because I'm the youth development officer at the club, so I watch some of the coaches. And it's just you get frustrated yourself watching coaches that overly stop matches or training session to give kind of group interventions, when actually it's only one person. You could have probably had a quick chat with that person, and everyone else could have been playing. And actually there's benefits of taking that player off, because all of a sudden you've created a 5v4 or a 6v5. You've got an overload there, right? So there are benefits there as well. Okay, so it sounds, I think everything I've heard so far, you're very much a development kind of orientated coach. And I think I was looking through the website, and I think on the website it was talk about one of your goals is to kind of help all the players that you coach, all the children you coach, to kind of play at the highest level they want to, and also kind of foster a lifelong love for the game. So clearly that's your kind of approach then. But how do you, out of interest, in terms of your environment at the different coaching sessions you do, how do you kind of make that conducive for learning and for development? Are there any kind of key things that you would do?
Yeah, I mean, once again, this has been a constant message, Mark, and it's once again knowing the players first and foremost.
Yeah. So if you didn't, out of interest, sorry to interrupt you, but if you didn't know the players, you're going into a session, I don't know, you've joined a development centre and you're coaching players, a different age group that you would normally do, and you don't know the players, for example, what would you how would you kind of go about it, do you think?
The first thing I need to do is to learn the names of at least 3 players. I will ask them all their names to begin with, of course.
Yeah.
But that's hard to remember at one. But I'll try and get used to knowing 3 players, and then once I've picked on those 3, so to speak, there'll be another 3. So by the end of the session, I want to make sure I know every single player's name.
Yeah, great.
And first of all, if the kid knows that you know their name, all of a sudden there's a little bit of a relationship there, so they're more likely to listen to you. As I've said earlier, there'll be a lot of question and answer. I want them to give me the answers. I know from my own experience, when I'm figuring things out for myself, I'm more likely to learn rather than if someone's just telling me and overloading me with information. So I want them to give me the answers. There'll be a lot of positive feedback. But I also think one of the big things, and this is something I learned in the States, I don't see it happen as much here, where people are I've seen people seem to be a little bit more reliant on whiteboards. And that's to make sure that everything's getting demonstrated. So people are actually getting to see the activity. If it's an activity that I'm not necessarily good at, and I've noticed there's a player who's a little bit tasty, I'll get them. Or if there's a player who's got a bit of an ego trip going on, I'll get them to do the demonstrating, because I know that's going to get their engagement levels a lot higher.
Yeah, it's so powerful as well, right? Having your kind of peers showing you something rather than the coach. I think that's such a powerful way of doing it. It's great for the person that's doing the demonstration, but I think it's great for the whole team. I think it's really, really powerful way of doing it.
Definitely. There's a lot to be said for someone you can relate to being able to do something.
And I think when you are the question and answers, I think that's an approach that I'd kind of like to use as well. I think that you're right around the learning aspect, but also the engagement as well. There's so much more engagement from the players when you're actually asking them questions and you're asking them open kind of ended questions. You get so much more back from them. And even at the beginning, when you first if you're with a new group, it takes a little bit of time for, I think, them to get the trust to respond. But after a while, you just get so much back from them, and you can really see them taking everything in.
One other thing as well I forgot to mention, and this is something I've been trying to do now for a few years, and that's to keep the things that you're saying as simple as possible. There's a lot of terms that are used in football that don't necessarily get used in every other day life, and it's interesting to know whether the kids know them or not. For example, I coached an under-8 girls team in North Carolina. They were a great group of players, but I wanted to ask them if they knew what certain things on the pitch were. So I asked them what the centre circle was. None of them knew. A couple of them pointed to the kickoff spot, but then I think one of them sort of guessed it was the circle around that. I asked them what the D was. They had no clue what that was. I asked them what the penalty box was. They looked dumbstruck. So I think making sure when you're starting to introduce certain terminologies, because it's important for them to know, but you've got to be able to break that down and keep the instructions simple. So when I've introduced, say, principles of play, I might have talked about support. I mean, I asked, actually, this happened this season. I asked my girls what they thought support meant in terms of football. And they said, well, it's being in the crowd and cheering people on. Obviously, it's, helping your teammate and giving them somewhere where they can pass the ball. So I've broke that down for them in a way that they can understand, and then we can start using that term on a broader scale.
Yeah, I think there's some really good points in there, and I think even things like that when I've been thinking about this in the past, like when you're attacking and you want to make we explain you want to make the pitch as big as possible, so you want to stretch the defense, and you just got to keep it very, very simple. When we're defending, we want to make the pitch as small as possible.
Yeah.
And when you say as big as possible, as small as possible, they don't really understand that, right? A pitch is a pitch, so it's like you're not changing the size of the pitch if you're attacking or defending. So you just have to make it simple. You want to make it. Can you stretch it widthwise and lengthwise of our kind of formation? So you're absolutely right there in terms of keeping things simple.
Yeah, I remember actually a tutor telling me once, talking about 7 or 8 year olds. You hear a coach is saying find space. Well, to some of those kids, space is where the aliens live. So it's no wonder that they're standing on the pitch looking like they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, indeed. So when we're talking about that environment, is it different between the age groups, I guess? So if you're coaching at under 8s, their environment you set for the under 8s, would it be different to if you're coaching your under 11s girls team, for example? Or if you're in the development centre and you've got under 12s, is the environment different? Or do you generally, for your foundation phase coaching, you would generally keep that environment the same across all age groups?
It'll be fairly similar. I probably do get a little bit stricter with the older age groups.
Yep.
Just because I think they can handle it a bit more, and also they're getting boys more so than girls are getting to that age where they like to answer back a little bit as well. But generally, I find if I keep it similar, that's when I get the best the best out of the players, the best performances, that's when they come away saying, thanks, Dave, that was a great session, I've enjoyed that, rather than trying to differentiate too much.
Yeah, yeah, and the same would go across boys and girls in general. The environment would be similar as well.
Yeah. Once again, there's some little nuances there. I
Yeah.
think boys, you can be a little bit more cheeky with them, so to speak. The girls, you generally have to be a little bit more friendly with them.
Yeah.
But and of course, especially when it's getting to that under 12 age group, there's a lot of physical differences going on between the two genders. So that's something else you've got to be mindful of as well.
Yeah.
And for myself and yourself, Mark, I'm sure coaching 12-year-old boys, that's something we can relate to, because we were once there. But coaching 12-year-old girls, we weren't. So we've got really no idea what they're going through. So that you've got to kind of, I've found, you've got to have a little bit more kid gloves.
Yeah.
With girls at that age, just because you can't relate to them, basically.
Yeah, I can see that. I've got two boys actually. I've got a 10-year-old and an 8-year-old at home, and it's I can certainly start to see the differences between the 10 and the 8-year-old in the last kind of 12 months. My eldest is going to go to senior school next year, so I'm sure it's going to escalate even further.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. All right. So in terms of your kind of typical training session, and it's something Scott and I talk a lot about actually, and even outside of the podcast, what kind of about our training sessions. What does a kind of typical training session look like for you then? And I don't know, you could maybe perhaps pick a particular theme that you're working on, or even talk about a syllabus that you've got, and then a particular training session. But just for the listeners, what would a typical training session, what are the kind of key kind of games or exercises you would have in most sessions?
I think for the most part, the teams that I've worked with have benefited from the unopposed opposed game structure to a session. I have worked with teams where that just didn't work for them, so I did the whole method, just because of where they were technically, and also where their energy levels were. They weren't going to benefit from an unopposed session.
Yeah.
The stuff we do with Leicester is a little bit different. Obviously, the syllabus is given to us, so with them there'll be a rival activity for them. We've got a 2-hour session with these, so it's a little bit more relaxed in terms of the time you can spend on stuff.
Yeah.
Then they'll do something for their physical development. So it could be speed, it could be their agility, it could be their their balance and coordination.
Yeah.
Then there would be a ball mastery session, and that could be dribbling, it could be turning, it could be passing and receiving, any kind of ball control, so to speak. Then it's the game related, and then you go into a game at the end.
Yeah.
With my grassroots team, most of the time it'll be a warm-up / unopposed. I'll have to combine them together because I've only got an hour for the session. Then we'll go into an opposed activity, and then we'll finish with at least 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes for a game at the end.
Yep.
Every now and then, because we have the two teams training at the same time, we might have a tournament week where we mix the players together. It's good for the old girls for their leadership skills, I feel, and it's good for the younger girls as well, just to play with kids a little bit older than them and maybe learn a few things that they've not seen on the pitch they've played with.
Yeah.
We also try and alternate week to week. So myself, I'm coaching one team, there's another coach coaching another team, but then we'll have team practice one week. The following week he'll work with outfield players and I'll work with any kids who want to play in goal. So we'll do goalkeeper practice as well. That's generally a fun warm up, a little bit of technical work, to work on like catching or diving or a skill they need. And then we'll go into goalie wars, because that's a game that every kid seems to love. Yeah,
it's a good game. Yeah. So have you got specific goalkeepers in your team then, or do all the girls going to take it in turns?
Yeah, it's not specific. I think it's a position where if a kid's fragile mentally, it's not good for them to play.
Right.
So I don't want to force anyone to play in goal. Some weeks we might have 5 or 6 girls or so. I want to play in goal today, so I'll during the games I'll split the time up evenly so they all get a chance. Yep. Other weeks you might only get 1 or 2. So I don't want to force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. In terms of those particular sessions, when it's the outfield skills and the goalkeeper session, the kids have got the choice of which one they want to do. So it's not like, right, well, you're not a goalkeeper, you've got to go there. If you want to come and do goalkeeper for a week, feel free. It's not, it's up to them what they want to learn at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. It's a good experience, right, for the boys and girls to get an opportunity to play in goal and understand what goalkeeping is all about, and even go through that experience of conceding goals, because it can be not a nice experience, but at least understand that,
Yeah.
and experience it. So for the girls team, you got an hour for the girls, right? Do you have an arrival activity or for the girls team, or do you just kind of generally just get straight into your session because you've only got an hour?
There'll be an arrival activity. So our session starts at 6 o'clock. The arrival
Yep.
activity will go until about 6:05, and then
Okay.
right, we stop. Then come on in. That's when the session goes. It varies from week to week. It's nothing specific. If we've got access to a load of goals, it might be something that incorporates the goals. So
Yep.
I was seeing it, for just something silly like, can you flick the ball over your head and volley it? Obviously, that's a skill that they're going to struggle with, especially ones who are so young.
Yeah.
But it's good for them to try it. It's not something you're really going to get a chance to work on in practice, and it's not something they might think about working on at home.
Yeah.
It could be a game of just 1v1. You've got 4 goals. You can go and score any of the goals. Go and play. It could be juggling. I just vary it up from week to week to stop it getting boring for them.
Yeah, great. Yeah. And in terms of, you mentioned about some of the physical aspects. I watched one of your videos. I think it was with the might have been the under-9 girls. I'm not sure. I think it was, the theme was playing out from the back, and you had a physical kind of exercise there, which looked good actually. It was around agility and reactions, and it didn't involve a ball, which I think was absolutely fine, and it was good to see that coaches involving the ABCs, agility, balance, coordination, because I think that can be an area that is a little bit underutilized in coaching in the foundation phase, right? I think it's really, really important. And so is that something that you put a lot of focus on in your sessions, the ABCs, or?
I wouldn't say it's a massive focus, but I do like to do one every other week. I was fortunate enough actually a few years ago to go and spend 3 days at the Ajax Academy. They were putting on a course for coaches, and there was about 30 of us that went over, and they were talking about their foundation age players, and obviously one of their big things to be an Ajax player is having speed. So they have 3 2-hour sessions a week with their under 8s to under 11s. But for the first half an hour, it's just speed work. But when we spoke to the speed coach about what he's doing, he said, well, we're just playing tag games, because they're getting to work their agility, they're getting to work their movements, they're getting to look around and see what's going on, and they're getting to work their speed as well. So it's not like, all right, and I know the activity you're talking about, and that one was a little bit structured, but once again, there was that little bit of competition about players racing and going against each other.
Yeah.
But it's something as simple as tag. I use 1v1 tag very consistently, and it always be part of my game day warm-ups as well, just because you're covering all those aspects.
Yeah, I think games like Fox's Tales with the bibs tucked in, that's a great way of twisting and turning, scanning. You can bring scanning into that, right? There's so many different elements you can bring into that. And I've done games, kind of practices like the one that I spoke about on the video, and it'd be great, I think, for the listeners just to go and have a look at some of that stuff, because I think there's some really good stuff you do on reactions as well. And you can start to bring kind of a few more mental games in where you switch, instead of being a yellow cone and a red cone. If you say red cone, you go to yellow cone. You say yellow cone, you go to the red cone. So you start to kind of mix it up and start them kind of thinking as well as because the reaction side of things. So I think I think that the whole physical and the ABC bit is really important in the foundation phase. I'm not saying that I would put loads and loads of time to it, but certainly I would try and incorporate it in a lot of the sessions I do, and try and keep it as fun as possible. So ball mastery as well. Do you do the ball mastery with the girls as well, or is that more just the academy, the development centre at Leicester? You do that?
Sometimes I might include it in warm-ups.
Yeah.
Once again, varying it from one week, it might be a little bit more physical and movement based. The next week, it's going to be a little bit more ball based. But what we have done, or what I have done, and this was an idea that came from a friend of mine who works for Alloa Athletic, is we give the girls homework cards.
Okay.
So we just printed it off, 14 different skills, 5 of which are ball mastery touches, I think 5 of which are turns, and 4 of which are 1v1 moves. And every week they've got one of each to practice in their own time, and then when they've done it, the parents will tick it off on each day on which one they've done. So that sort of helps cover us. Well, I find covers that team anyway. So that when we get to the team practice, we don't have to utilise it as much ourselves.
Yeah, that's a brilliant way of doing it, especially if you've only got an hour of your session. It's a great way of doing it. Set it as homework, and you can even just get them to exhibit it for a minute when they arrive to show they can do it and show off to their teammates and things. Yeah, I think it's a good way of doing it. Where do you stand on the whole opposed, unopposed ball mastery discussion? There's so much out there, right? Scott and I have a lot of discussions about it. I think we're broadly aligned, but where do you kind of stand on that piece?
Yeah, listen, I've been doing this for a long time. I've worked with a lot of players, and once again, it goes back to who the players are and what's going to benefit them the most.
Yeah.
I referenced your interview with Saul the other week, and I did a lot of one-to-one practice in the States with kids, some of who were very, very talented players. So we could look at real sort of, try and set up a situation that was as game realistic as possible. But there was other kids who were coming over from American football. So having a ball at their feet was like a foreign object to them. They needed that unopposed work just to get their foot-eye coordination. And there was one kid, I remember in particular, because he was part of the team I coached as well. When he started playing for us, the ball came near him, he'd just kick it away. By the end of the season, he was happy to have the ball and try and take a player on. And I know that didn't come from the team sessions. That came from the one-to-one work that I was doing with him. I don't think there's any right way.
Yeah.
I really don't. You know your players. You know what works best for them. Go out and set the session up as they need.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting it, Dave. To be honest with you, I think it's a mix of it as well. I think if you're doing it in conjunction with 1v1s and creating a bit more instead of being a very constant based practice, if it's variable and if you can try and get it more random, I think there's a lot of benefits there. But I think trying to master some of those fundamental skills is important for sure. Okay, and then I guess the final piece was the game. Would you describe your approach as a games-based approach, or do you have a lot of practices as well? Because there's a lot now, a lot of coaches now, and I'm one of them. I try to use small-sided games as much as possible in my sessions, outside of doing things like physical work or outside of kind of ball mastery. I try to make it game-based as much as possible and small-sided games wherever possible. What's your kind of approach there?
I try and do mostly games. When we do the unopposed stuff, that's a little bit more practice-based. I think one of the big things that I've found in order to get the engagement and make it seem more game-based is to incorporate some kind of competition.
Yeah.
Or some kind of race, because then it becomes a little bit more of a game for them.
Yeah.
Or if it's a dribbling activity, making sure that there's some kind of interference. So for example, there's one practice that I like, and for the younger girls, it's one that we do every game day warm up. So what you'll have is you'll have a big square and then a smaller square in the middle. They've got to dribble through the smaller square, turn, and then dribble back through, but they can't leave the bigger square. Now, because they're all dribbling through from different angles, they've got that bit of interference, but no one's actually trying to steal the ball off them. So it's kind of got that game element to it. They're also racing who can go through the most. So they've got that competition to try and go through as fast as they can. But once again, they've got that unopposed, that little bit of pressure release, knowing that they can still get their touches on the ball. So I think game time's important. I actually read an article by Michael Beale the other week, which I thought was fantastic. He was talking about session planning, and he said if you've got 20 minutes at the end set aside for games, do 20 minutes game at the end. If your practice isn't going as it wants, don't go over. Do the game, because that's what the kids are there for. So that's something I like to incorporate. I try and make sure there is a player versus player element, whether it's 1v1, whether it's 2v2, 3v2, 4v3, whatever. And that will take up the chunk of the session, but I still think in my sessions anyway, there's a place for that unopposed work.
Okay.
Which might be seen as more practice based.
Yeah. And would you say that kind of approach that you've got there about the kind of training session, does that vary by age group then? So I guess, and certainly from my experience, you get to under 11s, it's a bit more detailed around what you're asking the players to do. It becomes a bit more positional, whereas under sevens, under eights, you don't really have it, as it's not really as kind of that structured. Is that your general approach as well?
Yeah, and once again, gender comes into it. I think with boys, when it gets to under 11, under 12, you need to have that extra. It needs to be a lot more game based.
Yeah.
With the girls, with my experience anyway, they're a little bit more open to the practice side because, as I said earlier, they want to get things right before they want to go into that chaotic situation where things are a little bit more all over the place.
Yeah.
So the gender definitely has an impact as well.
Okay. All right. That's interesting. So I think we're kind of we're taking up quite a lot of your time here, Dave. It's a great conversation. Just a couple more things, if you don't mind. Just
Sure.
Just your experience of match day. And I know we kind of touched on some of it earlier, because I think as a coach, you can create your environment at training, and you can make it right for development. You could make it fun, all those things, and you should be making them it right for development and fun. But when it comes to match day, you've obviously got the external factor coming in. You've got the opposition coach, the parent. You don't know how they're gonna react, or what they're gonna be like, and sometimes the experience isn't great from what I've been through, and quite a lot actually. How do you? What's your kind of feeling on match day, and what's your experience been like?
It's been, the amount of coaching I've done. It's been very varied.
Yeah.
I got threatened once in the States, which was quite interesting. Some bloke threatened to knock me out, but he did it very quietly, so the referee didn't hear.
What did you do?
I just stayed quiet. I was the away team, so I stayed quiet and just stepped back. You know. Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think parent communication's important. You know, you can't, like you've said, you can't dictate what happens with the other coaches and the other parents. You can only sort of control yourself and try and educate your own parents. So making sure your parents are doing your best to make sure your parents are behaving in a certain way is certainly important. I think in terms of helping the players with their mindset, keeping your warm-ups consistent from week to week, definitely helps, rather than trying to mix and match it. One thing I've started doing, and I started doing this in January, we had a futsal tournament during our winter break, and I used it as an opportunity to say to both teams, you're deciding what formation we're playing, you're deciding who's starting today.
Brilliant.
And they really seem to take to that. So that's something we've been doing in our outfield games since then.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
You know, the younger girls especially have been very, very mature in terms of making those decisions. And it's the same with substitutes when it comes to the quarter break. I'm going to ask the subs, who are you subbing in for? So they'll pick. And that sort of gives it the onus. It takes, I guess, from a coaching point of view, it takes the attention away from me, and it just makes it all about them. Something I used to do more in the States than here, because it's not always accessible here. But if there's a bench, unless I have something to say, I'll sit down.
Yep.
So it's once again that imposing figure, just stepping back. And I know as well, when I'm sitting down, I'm not going to say anything. It's one of these things. Whereas I know if I'm standing up, I'm more likely to speak when I don't need to. And then the final thing for me is, especially with my younger girls, because they have been struggling, you know, results wise, so to speak. They had a few games where they was getting scored on quite a lot, but not scoring themselves, was to give them targets. So rather than talking about results, because even though as a coach, it's not your goal, you know, the kids are thinking it. I mean, we was all that age, you know, at one point, and we all came off the pitch and said, "Oh, it's this score." So from my point of view, it might be, or I want to see, you know, 5 successful 1v1 dribbles. I want to see 3 consecutive passes at least twice. I want to see 5 shots. I want to see 2 goals. And giving the girls those targets to focus on achieving rather than a result.
Yeah.
That certainly seems to help them perform a lot better and be a lot more relaxed on the pitch.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of doing it, right? You're taking the focus off the result and you're putting it onto something else. And I think even if you engage with the parents before the match or leading up to the match, in terms of what the focus is, I think that helps, right, as well. Take the result element out of it, and it shouldn't be about the result. Obviously, you want the players to go out there and win. When I'm there as a coach, I want to win, but a win for me is seeing the team being competitive and seeing them doing the things that we do in training. The result doesn't really matter at all. I know I was watching, funnily enough, my team. I think we were getting beat quite heavily. I didn't know what the score was, but a coach come up to me and from another team and said, "Oh, what's the score?" And I'm like, "I literally don't know. Sorry, mate. I literally don't know what the score is. We were losing. I know we were losing. It could have been 5 or 6-0. I don't know, but I literally didn't know the score. I just said I know that the other team are winning, but I don't know the score." And I think the other thing you mentioned about giving the players the kind of ownership as well, letting them choose the team and substitutes and formations and things like that. I think that's really, really powerful as well. It gets that engagement, gets them bought into the kind of process. I think that's brilliant. I've done that a couple of times myself. I haven't been brave enough to kind of do it a lot in what's called kind of league matches.
Yeah.
I know that it's non-competitive, but obviously we're in leagues, and the leagues are not particularly developmental in their approach.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's also a great way of doing it. And you mentioned futsal there as well, and I don't want to kind of leave that out because there's something that I've done with the under 11s and Scott's done with the under 8s as well, and I think it's brilliant. It's another fantastic tool, right, and for development and getting them to understand a slightly different format. I think it's fantastic. It's also great in the winter being indoors. That helps a lot.
Yeah. Actually, this winter was my first experience of it, and I thought it was fantastic. Every single one of the players on both age groups, they loved it. They had a great time.
Yeah,
you could see in terms of confidence, especially with the reduced bounce of the ball and with it being less likely to bounce off your foot. Players all of a sudden who normally kick the ball away seemed a lot more confident dribbling because it was sticking to their foot a lot better. It was I think it's a fantastic tool, and for me personally, we were talking earlier about how the weather's been. It was pretty poor during January and February. I personally would like the FA to sort of come up with a way to just cancel January and February games and just make, I don't know, maybe alternate weekend futsal tournaments going on, because I think it would be far more beneficial for the players.
Yeah, totally agree. We're lucky that we have a futsal kind of league that runs relatively local to where we are, so we can play in that most of the year actually. So it's really great. And there's so many different aspects of futsal. The fact that you can't pass back to the goalkeeper, so you're kind of putting the players under a bit of stress and they have to deal with the ball. The fact that you've got that 3 or 4 second rule to kind of play in, it just makes the game flow very quickly, and the limited bounce on the ball and things like that. It's really good. And actually, I started to go and watch. I've taken my eldest son, to watch a couple of live futsal games as well. So and he loved it. That's a great experience. Definitely worth, if you get an opportunity to go and watch a futsal match, is worth doing. Yeah, really good. All right, Dave. I think that's kind of that's pretty much we've exhausted a lot of the kind of points we wanted to cover really, and so listen, thanks very much. It was a great conversation. It's great speaking to you. I'm glad we finally managed to talk. I think there's so much in what we've kind of spoken about there. For me, I know I've made a couple of pages of notes here. So thanks very much for your time. I'm going to ask you one more question actually before we go, which I like to ask a lot of different people. So if you could change one thing about football in the foundation phase, what would it be? And you can be as controversial or non-controversial as you want to.
I think the restrictions that leagues put in place would be it. Referencing the trip I took to Ajax.
Yeah.
On the Saturday we got to watch their under 8s, their under 11s, their 13s, and their 17s play. The under 11s I think had 16 players, and they were playing against the team who had 16 players. So rather than having just a regular game going on, what they did was they set up 2 cone pitches and had 2 7v7s on the go at the same time.
Brilliant.
And they allowed the kids to make up the rules. They could dribble the ball back in. They could throw it to themselves and whatnot. And it was still brilliant football to watch. And I think I just don't think the competitiveness or the structure of league play is necessarily needed at foundation ages.
Brilliant. I totally agree. I think almost leagues should just be kind of facilitators to get teams together, and then it's up to the teams to kind of go from there. I think that's a great point. Probably one of the best answers I've heard, actually, Dave. So thanks for that. So listen, thanks so much for your time, Dave. Really appreciate it. Obviously, you've got the website, the Foundation Age Coaching, the foundationagecoaching.com.
Yes.
So obviously people can go on there, and I strongly recommend people to have a look through that. It's brilliant. I think you can have a look at a certain number of articles free of charge, or there's a kind of very small fee for getting access to the rest of the website. But it's that's really good. How can people contact you on Twitter, Dave?
Yeah, okay. So on Twitter, it's at Coach Dave Fran, or they can email me, davef@foundationagecoaching.com.
Perfect. Okay, brilliant. Listen, thanks very much for your time, Dave. Hopefully you will get back out on the grass and in the gyms pretty soon, so we can get back to coaching. I think it'd be great. Maybe we could have another conversation next season, because again, there's so much we haven't covered, and we can get into more detail on things. So it'd be great to have you back on at some point.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mark, and thanks a lot for all the great work you guys are doing as well. The episodes have been fantastic to listen to.
Good to hear. Thanks, Dave. Take care. Speak soon.
Cheers, mate.